Yeah.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Elliot.
Good
Awesome.
afternoon.
Long time no see.
Hello. Long time no see. Okay. So we're here today for Rise of Self-Service Buying and Enabled Buyers Market. Oh my goodness, cannot speak. Dealing with a little bit of cold. Sorry about that. Super excited about the content and takeaways everyone's going to be getting out of this event. Of course, today's event is brought to you by the team over here, Modern Sales Pros. For those of you who aren't familiar with Modern Sales Pros, it is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they'd struggle to solve on their own and help them see around corners that they may not know about. We do that through live sessions like this, an online forum, and our quarterly summits. If you're not already a part of MSP, you're going to be invited to join after this event. Speaking of quarterly summits, we actually have our next one coming up. It's our Revenue Excellence Summit, the Megasco, January 24th through 26th, 2023. Going to have over 20 events, 5,000 modern sales pros in attendance, over 60 VIP speakers. You're going to be hearing from leaders at Drift, Sales Loft, Lean Data, Stage 2 Capital, and many more. So don't miss out. Going to be dropping a link to register for this summit in the chat. Give me 1 second, guys, to grab that link. Awesome. You should see the link to register in the chat now. So before we dive in, going to go over some quick housekeeping notes. Of course, this event is being recorded. You're going to be able to access the recording and key takeaways on the previous events page of the MSP website. Second, if there's any questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A function, and they'll do their best to get to them during the event. Okay, going to pass things over to you, Ben, to introduce Navatic a little bit, and take things away, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Excited to be here. A little bit about Navatic. We are a platform that enables teams to build out product tours of their software with no code or technical resources. So really, it's a new and unique way for teams to share their software in a way that maybe previously they hadn't been able to before. And so we serve a variety of use cases from obviously sales, enablement, and marketing. Really excited about what we're building over here. It's a pretty new space, so happy to connect with anybody who's interested.
So hello, everyone. I'm the moderator for today. I'm David Weiss. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at the Sales Collective. Sales Collective is a content building, sales process building, training, and hiring organization for the sales community. And I'm really excited to have Ben and Tim join us to talk about the rise of self-service buying. So thank you, MSP, for putting this on. Ben, over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much, David. So my name is Ben Pearson, head of sales and go-to-market over at Navatic. I've been with the company for just over a year and a half now, dialing in from Phoenix, Arizona. Prior to my tenure here at Navatic, I was at companies like Square and Front in a sort of account executive IC role. So I've been in tech sales for about 6-7 years now. Excited to be here, David.
Thanks, Ben. Tim, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, David. My name is Tim Hannerf. I'm one of the co-founders of G2.com, and I am head of our innovation team, which we call G2 Labs. And my background is in product, however, but I think G2, if you're not familiar with us, we are a review site for B2B software where peers can find real user experience from people that have used the software in the buying process.
Awesome. Tim, thanks for joining us. So we're going to kick off today's session with a fun icebreaker as people funnel in. So what interesting thing do you all maybe have in your office that is a little bit different than maybe your traditional office? Ben, do you want to go first with yours maybe?
Yeah, happy to. So let's think about this question. I think the weirdest or strangest thing I have in my office is a selfie light that's connected to my monitor right now. I'm not a huge social media person, or I would say selfie person broadly, but it was sort of a requirement. The room that I'm in right now is natural light only. So for a long time, I felt like half my face is very dark. I looked very gloomy. So purchased a selfie light, which is something I really never thought I'd have.
Nice, man. Cool. Tim, I know you're traveling today, so this is probably not your traditional office, but what anything for you?
Yeah, so I am in a friend's office conference room, and it's a legal office, and I think it's pretty sterile. So I think the most interesting thing in the room is actually the gray paint behind me. But it does have wonderful light, so I don't need a selfie camera.
You look great, man. Good lighting. It's solid. For me, I don't know. I think I may be the only person in the world. I actually have a pillow that says MedPick on it, which is one of my favorite ways of looking at deals. I think I got a lightsaber back there, which is pretty cool too. We just were at Disney, but awesome. So let's jump into maybe some of the meat of this. The first question for the group, like, why buyer enablement? Like, don't we want our salespeople talking to our customers first? Like, why help the buyer not talk to sales maybe to start? Like, where'd this all come from? Ben, I mean, being who you are at Nevada, I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely really top of mind for us. And I think ultimately the way I think about this is whether it's fair or not, I think it simply comes down to the expectation of the buyer based on their experience in the B2C world. Like today, Tim or David, if you wanted to hop on Amazon right now, as an example, you could type in really anything you want to buy. 2 clicks later, you purchased it. 24 hours later, it's at your front door. So whether it's fair or not, I do think that buyers bring those expectations that they experience in their consumer lives into buying software. I think it's the right way to think about it. It's the more enjoyable way to purchase SaaS. So whether it's fair or not, I think that a lot of the behaviors that we see in B2B today are derivative from their experience in B2C. I think the other piece of that question, David, I think about a lot is, I think the answer is yes. We do want them to speak with sales, right? This is the goal of this is not necessarily to derail them from that demo or that sales-led experience. I think what we're trying to squash is that maybe somewhat horrendous selling or buying experience that everybody has had, where it's, you execute a CTA, you wait 3 or 4 days before chatting with a qualification call, another 2 or 3 days before you chat with a discovery call and an AE, and then a week goes by before you see the product, and another week before you see pricing. So the answer is yes. We want them to chat with your sales team, and we want your sales team enabled to do their job. But the goal is to make the process of getting there a little bit easier. And once they do get to your, Zoom call or your meeting, they're a little bit more qualified and excited to speak with you, and maybe not frustrated with the time it took to get there.
Oh, that makes a ton of sense. Tim, what are you seeing on G2 as far as feedback on this or the rise of this? Love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, first, I love what Ben said around the consumerization of B2B software buying. It's really one of the reasons that we started G2. We found it funny that you could get better information on a $100 hotel room than you could on a $100,000 piece of software out there. And so we set out to change that. And I know many sellers fear that a little bit because they're not in control, but I encourage sellers to really embrace it. And I think what we've discovered over time, and some of our most recent research shows that about only 68% of the software buying community engages with sales. They wait till the very end to engage with sales. So they've done a lot of their research up front. But when we ask them, would you like sales to be a little more proactive? Actually, a very large number, 75%, say that they would actually like to engage with sales earlier than what they are today. And so that makes you wonder, why are those two numbers different? And I think I came to the conclusion that they want to trust sales, but they don't for some reason. And so the question is, really, it's all about trust. And so how do you build trust? And from a sales perspective, right, the way that the information that's out there about you online is what the buyer perceives you are. And so as a marketing team and as a sales team, right, everybody has to help build that trust through transparency. And the more information that you put out there, the more transparent you are, the more trust they enable. And ultimately, that trust comes through when a salesperson reaches out and vice versa. And I think ultimately what a buyer wants is they want that trust, but they want, what I would say, the right information from the right place at the right time. Yeah. And building your teams, your marketing, your sales teams around that is I think a key part of the solution.
Yeah, Gartner, it was either Gartner or Forrester has recently, put out over the last handful of years around the modern buying experience, and they're tracking like 57% are going to go through most of the journey before they even touch sales. You guys are tracking 68%, so I mean, close numbers, but it's more than half. More than half of a buying journey is going to take place without a seller present. And I think it's to your point, like, people now with the freedom of information, all the information out there, they want the ability to figure out on their own, does this really solve the problem I'm trying to solve, and how does it solve it, and who needs to be involved in all this different information. So by the time they talk to the seller, they maybe have less of a they don't need to rely on the salesperson to maybe bias their opinion on something. They can trust the seller and now guide the rest of the way. So that's really interesting. So I mean, are we saying that if you aren't doing buyer enablement, then you're missing out on 50 to 60% of your audience's the top of the awareness journey?
I think it's that, David, and I think the other piece of this that I'm excited to highlight is maybe the other side. When you think about buyer enablement, obviously it's extremely focused on the prospect and making that buying journey easy. But what we hear like over and over again at Novatic, and this is honestly the reason I got interested in Novatic like 2 years ago when I blind DM'd Neil, one of our co-founders, was like, hey, I think what you're building is really cool. The reason being is what we hear over and over again, teams are trying to figure out a way to save their sales team time. And buyer enablement enables them to do so. So over and over again, I'm talking to sales leaders or go-to-market leaders and say, Ben, my sales reps are on way too many calls a week. Way too many sort of show up and throw up demos or demonstrations or calls that maybe they don't necessarily need to be on that could be solved with buyer enablement resources. So if Tim is a prospect of Novatic, he can go on our website or wherever that may be and go through a product tour, a video, jump on G2's website, whatever that may be, and go through some level of self-qualification so that, sales reps at Novatic, maybe they're not on 15 calls a week, maybe they're on 10, but the 10 that they're on are very high quality. And the 5 that they're missing are some of those less qualified leads that truthfully, and if all the sales reps listening out there kind of know what I'm saying right now, is somewhat of a little bit of a waste of time, or maybe some of those demos that you're trying to figure out a way to automate or make more efficient. And that's what this buyer enablement can do, not just for the buyers, but again, the sales side of the house as well, which I think is really, really important here.
Yeah, Ben, I love that. So the buyer's getting farther along in their journey, so they can self-select out in a way if they feel like your product isn't a fit, or sellers can pick up there and go those layers deeper with them faster. That's really cool. Tim, what are you seeing?
Yeah, a few things from the G2 side. First, I think we see content, we look at, and our research shows where are buyers going, and they definitely want to go to the software provider's website, but they want way more than that. They're looking at third-party sites. Review sites are a big part of it, and other places as well. And they are looking for that type of content, right? Peer user feedback. They're looking for that validation that this company can be trusted before they dig in deeper. And so on our site, one of the most things that we see is they look at the reviews. They're front and center, of course. But when we start to look at what are they clicking on next and what's important, they really want some of that content where they can do their own research. And we have several media types that the software providers can include in their G2 profile. For example, one of them is just screenshots. You can also do videos, and you can also do interactive demos. And we are seeing, from an engagement perspective, our early statistics show that they're twice as likely to click on an interactive demo because they want to get into the details than they would be on a video and or a screenshot.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you kind of have the ability to take them through some specific journeys and use cases early on that if your website doesn't have this and not enabled with this, either sales could miss or they may not even consider your product. Is that what you're saying? So if you have these different journeys, they can kind of start pulling threads early around the problems that you can help them solve. Is that what you're seeing, Tim?
I think so. I think, a lot of times, right, the marketing message, may mean something to someone. It may mean something to someone else. And so by getting in there and exploring the product, they are able to say, yeah, this is headed in the right direction of what I think it should do for me. And it solves some of the problems that I need to solve. And I think it's, if they're headed in the right direction, if the product's headed in the right direction for what they want, they're more than likely going to reach out then and ask some of those questions. Does it do X, Y, Z? I didn't see this in the demo. What do you think about this? And I think that's where the sales team really starts to get additive to the process.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
I'm sorry. Totally cut you off there. My fault.
No, all you. Yeah.
So the one thing I was going to add to that as well is I think something we're seeing, and again, whether this is fair or not, if you aren't on G2, if you don't have some sort of buyer enablement tools, I think the way the direction the market is going is every SaaS company is trying to achieve this happy medium of making buying their product easy. How easy can we make it to buy this software? Just going back to that B2C experience we were talking about before, just like making something super easy to buy on Amazon. That's why it blew up, right? How simple can we make it to experience what does the product do? What does it cost? How quickly can I get set up? And so whether it's fair or not, I think what we're seeing, especially here in Nevada, is a large portion or pillar in their decision-making process is what was it like working with David? How easy was it? You know, if David offers a product tour and pricing on his website and is on G2 and Tim's company isn't on any of those three fronts, you know, if it's a pretty head-to-head battle or apples to apples, chances are that prospect is going to go with the company that was just easier doing business with. That seems really simplistic, but honestly, it is something that we're hearing and seeing a ton in our own sales at Nevada.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear. Oh, Tim, please.
I was just going to kind of add on to what you're saying and the research that we see, right? This ease of doing business with and the ease of sales, right? The number one thing that we see buyers want is they want not only ease of doing business, but ease to use the software. And I think this is a hypothesis that I'd have is like, if you're easy to do business with early in the process, that more than likely means that culture within your company has also transferred to the implementation and the use of the software as well.
Yeah, I think you both are nailing it. And I hear easy to do business with, but I'm also hearing risk. So I think there's so much, especially as we enter 23 and, you know, fear of recession and things like that. Organizations are going to, yes, does it solve my problem? Yes. Does it fit into the budget? But I think more importantly in environments where there is more fear and uncertainty, and there is more potential for, if something goes wrong, this negatively impacts our business, my career, things like that. They want a solution that is as least risky to successfully deploy as possible. So I think there's part of that where, you know, Tim with G2, you know, your ability to see successful implementations and crowdfund that, you know, reduces that risk. And then Ben, to your point, like, am I seeing the problem they solve, how it's deployed, the interactions of it? I think you both are doing a really nice job of like de-risking an evaluation to a point where someone can be more confident in their decision. So with what we're seeing as far as, you know, we understand the buyer side, like this makes just a ton of sense from a buying perspective, but how does, you know, an individual's role as a salesperson kind of change in this environment?
I can take a crack at this, Tim. I think, honestly, when we were reviewing the questions, David, before the call, this is the one I got most excited about, because this is creating a culture that honestly is really that home run or dream scenario for sales reps, which is a deal cycle that allows a sales rep to be two things. Number one, way more product focused, which is, I think, the goal of every single company when they're hiring sales folks, is to hire sales folks who are going to really care about and love the product. Because if we're offering buyer enablement resources, chances are, you know, Tim or David have had a chance to start a free trial or go through a product tour or see a video, have some experience with our platform before they come chat with sales. So they're not going to be an expert in it, but they're certainly going to know a little bit about it. And so it requires sales reps to be truly experts in the product, because the prospects they're going to be speaking with aren't blank canvases. They've already experienced it in some capacity. And the most important part of this is it enables our sales reps in the industry to truly be consultants. And that sounds so buzzwordy, but what I really mean by that is enabling buyers to get hands-on experience of the product before coming inbound will help them further along in the journey. So now when I'm giving that initial discovery call or that demo, it's not me trying to explain to Tim what a product tour does and the general value about it. It's Tim telling me, Ben, I went on your website and I went through your product tour and I saw X, Y, and Z. My hope is that Nevada does this because this is what I'm looking to solve. Is that right? And from there, as a sales rep, I can validate that, yes, we are a good fit. And now let's take a deeper dive at a granular level. Or, Tim, thanks so much for reaching out, but we're actually a better fit for this. So it allows sales reps, going back to, I think, David and Tim, what you both highlighted, which is that trust portion of it. I am no longer trying to sell you. I'm trying to validate what you have already seen or go a little bit deeper and, you know, answer some of those next level questions. So it sets sales reps up to truly be qualifying, or I should say converting these leads at a little bit of a higher rate, because the leads and prospects that are coming to them are much warmer when they go through these buyer enablement processes than when they don't.
Tim, from yeah, please.
Yeah, I was just, when you were talking about this, I was thinking about a friend of mine who did some research, and he is in sales as well, but did some research in the consumer world about this. And he asked, and if you think about, you know, helping, if you go into a retail store and, you know, you're looking for a shirt or whatever it is you're looking for, and, you know, most often, like, you want to kind of shop for the shirt. on your own. And you want to find it, right? It's a very common paradigm that we all have. And he went into a store and did a little bit of consulting and research with them and asked them to do an A/B test of use the words, how can I help you? And then try using the words, how can I support you? And believe it or not, they were 10x more likely to engage with that salesperson with the word support versus help, which I found interesting. And so if I think about that from a standpoint of B2B buying, right, they want support along and help. They may not say, well, I don't need help. I can figure this out on my own. I think there's some natural like tendencies amongst humans to do that. But if they need support, like I know you're here when I need it, there's a much better reaction to how you're coming alongside them.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting point. So like we've talked a little bit so far around how platforms like Nevada can, provide early access to demo and early access to information, and how we can put those in G2 so people can read a review and maybe pull a thread. But how is it helping buyers kind of maybe and sellers interact once they're into a sales process? Like what are we seeing there? Tim, to your point, like we want to enable not just top of funnel information gathering, but we want to help them throughout the whole rest of the journey as well. Ben, where are you seeing Nevada kind of play into some of those areas?
Yeah, certainly. I think before I got into this space about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, if you would have said the words buyer enablement or self-serve, I would have immediately and exclusively thought that you were referring to a free trial. And I think it's really important to distinguish that this isn't exclusively referring to free trials. And I think whether it's a video, a product tour, or other assets, review websites, customer testimonials, what really is helpful that we see is, especially now, there are so many, and I apologize, I don't have the statistics around this, but all sellers kind of understand what I'm talking about here. There's always multiple stakeholders, right? So oftentimes in our deal cycles, it's, hey, Ben, this demo is cool, great, whatever, we're definitely interested, but I need to loop in, other stakeholders, or I need to share this call recording, for example, with other individuals internally. And being able to really empower our champions is going to be driving these sales. I especially think, David, as you mentioned, going into 2023 with some economic uncertainty, being able to build strong business cases is going to be more essential maybe than ever before. So having resources that you can provide, not only to get people interested and come inbound, but enable them to be that champion internally and push these ideas or products through the finish line, if you will, I think is going to be tremendously important. And that's the way we see teams using product tours today is, creating an interactive demo that I can share with Tim so that he can share with the other co-founders at G2 or people internally who maybe missed that call. That's really the way that we're using it today.
Are you seeing people take almost some like story journeys? Are you seeing people go that level with it, where as opposed to doing the entire demo, really starting to highlight like these independent problems that are being solved, or these independent stories that are being told, and then pulling that thread? So to your point, when they go to share it internally, what a CEO versus CRO versus CFO versus a director of this and a director of that care about, they'll care about maybe revenue, or they'll care about like the big picture problem, but the how behind it and how it's solved and what it means to them changes a little bit through their lens. Are you seeing organizations kind of use this in a smart way to kind of break out those journeys?
Yeah, I think it's that. And honestly, my mind runs to scenarios in my past selling where a prospect, David, to your point, would request something of that nature, and I wouldn't have anything for them. And all sales reps have had that before. And then you're frantically pinging your teammates or your marketing team or looking for some sort of asset that you can quickly spin up and send over. So it's something that I think more than ever we're being requested for, whether, David, as you mentioned, it is a very niche use case or verticalization or something like that. But I think more often than not, especially with the state of the economy, we are seeing a lot of prospects asking us for additional assets after those discovery calls and demos to help build this business case internally.
Yep. Tim, what's your perspective on this one?
Well, I was just thinking about what Ben said around multiple stakeholders. And from, again, the G2 research side, we see about 80% of buyers, it's a committee that's buying. And so there's not one stakeholder. And from a sales perspective, I know, the process and the old process has been submit an RFP and then respond to the RFP. And then at some point, if you make it through the process, you're going to go to this big demo. Everybody's going to be in the room, but wait, we rescheduled it 20 times because, one of the stakeholders couldn't make it or got sick. And so then you're rescheduling, maybe a flight in some cases. And then you get into the room and you've got the use cases that you're going to demo out. And like 90% of the time, 90% of the people in the room don't care about those. They've got the 3 use cases that they care about. And they've got to listen through the whole thing. And so by being able to do, David, what you're talking about, break some of these things out, share them asynchronously, and people being able to see these demos and videos when they want to watch them, it not only, I think, does a couple of things. It speeds up the sales cycle because of the asynchronous communication. It also reduces the cost of sale at the same time, because, Ben, I'm sure you've experienced this yourself. It's like, well, this person couldn't make it. Can you do the whole thing over again?
The worst.
Yeah. And Tim, to your point, as we enter 23 and decisions potentially get pushed off due to priority and things like that, how do we take what is potentially looking at being a elongated selling season, and to your point, reduce it and keep it top of mind by continuing to share the thing that this person cares about versus this person, as opposed to like trying to do a one size fits all with everybody.
Well, yeah, I completely agree with that. The other thing that the research shows is that in these buying committees, they change as you're going through, because of the elongated cycle, they change. And so like the person that you gave the demo to back when you did the first round, now there's 3 new players that they've got to see it. And so what do? You get in a room, you do it again. But if the videos are already there, or the interactive demos that you've created, right, just resend, they're already available to them.
Yeah. Here's your Netflix playlist of your company's interactions with
right.
Yeah. No, that's
and sorry, Dave, I do think that the speed of deal cycles, similar to the old adage that like the most important part of the deal cycle is discovery. And oftentimes when you look back on stalled deals, it can all be like traced back to discovery, something you didn't answer or forgot to ask or something of that nature. And I think this can all be traced back to the assets we're providing our buyers, enabling them with too, right? Like if they are very enabled before they come inbound, they've gone through G2, they've read customer testimonials, they've done an interactive demo. By the time they reach you, presumably they should be further along the journey, that those deal cycles should start to feel like they're shrinking a little bit. So I think that's another piece of it as well.
Yeah, and I know we talked about this and we hear it, and Jessica, put in the chat here, which is a really good question. It's like, how much information is too much information? And we're seeing the rise of decision fatigue, the need to have and instill decision confidence to move sales processes farther along. But we're also providing way more information than we ever have, and information is also way easier to find than it ever has been. So it's like now people are constantly talking to more sellers and looking more information and all this. How is what you're doing, Ben? How is it helping to crystallize and maybe even help with removing some of that decision fatigue? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think when I was thinking about this question, it's going to sound a little bit like a cop-out, but I actually do think it is the best answer. When it comes to figuring out how much information you be sharing with your prospects, go to your sales team and ask what the feedback they're hearing is from their prospects, because they will be able to tell you. They will tell you on a majority of calls, prospects are asking for this or complaining that we don't have that, or letting me know that they absolutely love this. So my answer, especially to marketers, whoever is making these enablement decisions, is go talk to your sellers, find out what your prospects are saying, what they want. And this is a very, very strong and solidified way to understand what information you're missing, what information you have that your prospects love. For us at Novatic, truthfully, it's pricing. Prospects really always want to understand what our pricing is, and they love the fact that we have an interactive demo, that we have really strong G2 reviews and customer testimonials. That's what we hear that they love, and they really hate the fact that right now today we don't have pricing on our website. So that's something obviously we're thinking about internally. So Jessica, what I would say to you is go talk to your sellers, go talk to the frontline ICs who run prospect calls all day long. And I guarantee you off the top of their head, they'll have a couple of things that they'll say, oh yeah, prospects always ask me about this. It'd be great to have that.
Tim, your perspective on this one?
Yeah, on the buyer fatigue, it's a hard question because, I think this comes back to my answer before, is like trying to figure out what that buyer wants at the right time. Yep. And where they're at in their journey, and then provide that to them. And there's a lot of new technologies out there that start to tell, what buyers are looking at, what information, and you can start to get where they're at in that buying journey. So do they just need more around the problems that are being solved, or are they at the stage where they really want some detailed information? And so I just think about this as you're supporting them on giving them the right information at the right time. And how can you support them in doing so, as opposed to just saying, here's everything we have. And so this personalization that you can do is very important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, when I think of decision fatigue and buyer fatigue, I think it's because so much of the sales process, when I'm going and talking to 5 competitors about to solve the same problem, I hear the same story 5 times. We've got great implementation. We have the same features and functions, because at the end of the day, the speed of development has gotten so quick that if a competitor has this and the other one doesn't, they can close that gap much faster than any other point in history. So I feel like that's where so much fatigue is coming from. Is it's the same information, and then you start going into, well, then how do I make a decision? If here's our criteria, and the same information is being provided to me on that criteria that I'm seeing everywhere, who do I actually trust? And how do I actually delineate this out? And I think Tim, from the reviews and the unbiased opinions and the crowdsourced peer-based information, I think G2 does a really nice job of that. I don't know like any stats from the site around how people are using it to actually make their decisions, or where, or information like that, but I feel like that level of unbiasedness is what a lot of people are looking for to remove some of that fatigue.
Yeah, what we see within G2 today, people come to G2 for 2 reasons. One is what I would call discovery. So they're looking for that short list of buyers that they can trust, or sellers that they can trust. And the transparency and what they find out on from the other buyers and the reviews does a lot of that. And then the other side is the due diligence. We think we really like working with Bennett Novatic, but does everybody's experience match what he's telling me? And I want to know that matches. And if it does, you close the deal.
Yep. Ben, are you seeing people use this in any sort of competitive stances, or ways to just remove some of that fatigue by getting really granular on differentiation or problems or things like that? Any thoughts there?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if I can say any better than what Tim just did around, is my experience with XYZ vendor the same experience that others have had? And I think it is in companies' best interest to develop buyer enablement, and honestly, specifically for us anyway, G2 reviews, prioritizing our presence there, because it is such a powerful tool to be able to share in very competitive deals. And I also think it ultimately comes back to the simplicity of the experience that you have as a buyer. And I think about my own experience this year in a couple different softwares that I purchased. There's so many, like you were mentioning, David, vendors out there in one specific space. It can be paralysis by analysis. Who the hell should I move forward with? And for me, in the 2 decisions in regards to software I purchased this year, it was, who did I enjoy working with the most? Who made it easiest to buy? Like we've already talked about, what experience did I enjoy the most? And after I had gone through some of those third-party validations like G2 and some of that, it really did just come down to what was my experience like. And a lot of that is, how much of that can Ben Pearson do on his own? Like, I don't have a lot of time to go through a really long sales process. I want to hop on G2. I want to go on your website. I want to understand what your product does, what the pricing is, how quickly I can get it up and running. And so who I work with the best and enjoy the most is ultimately, I think, how people are shaping their decisions.
Awesome. So we're seeing some questions in chat, and we were talking about this before, is like, how do we figure out when and where and how to use this in the best way possible? Like, what's the delineation between what I put on my website versus what I keep for my sales teams with me? And there's things like, do we do this for every segment and every deal size, or is it very specific? So I'm throwing a lot at you, Ben. We're gonna piecemeal some of this out, but let's just start with kind of the top level. Like, what do we put on the website versus save for sellers? What's the best strategy there for people thinking about deploying something like this?
Yeah, it's kind of funny selling Novatic, especially in the context of putting a product tour on your website, which is the way that the majority of our customers use it today. Because what we have seen on the website as it pertains to product tours, generally speaking, is less is more. The goal of specifically product tours in this instance is not to show every corner of your software. Your sales team can demo the product way better than we can. The goal is to highlight key value props or those sort of aha moments. And our data shows that product tours on website, again, specifically product tours, shouldn't be much longer than 12 to 15-ish steps. Tim's a busy guy. He doesn't have time to go through a 45-step product tour demo, for example. So generally speaking, less is more. Baking in call to actions every 6 or 7 steps. These are some of the tips and tricks that we help our customers deploy to best optimize these demos. But I would say, in my opinion, less is more. But again, kind of falling back to listening very closely, have a good pulse on what our prospects are asking for.
Tim, what are your thoughts on how much information should be put out there versus, kept back for the sales team? Like any thoughts there?
Yeah. I think every product is different. And so I don't know that you can, make the same decision for every single product. I think certainly leading with your main value prop to make sure that it's in the right ballpark and keeping that simple. So you're not wasting a potential client's time is a very wise thing to do. But then, providing information, if they can narrow down their use cases and you can guide them down a path of, well, here's some additional information that might be right for you based on who you are. Are you an enterprise buyer? Are you a SMB buyer? Are you in a certain industry? All these things, right, that you might ask, a salesperson might ask as well, and then they can provide additional information. If you can guide them down that path and then provide that information if they want it, or at any time they want to opt in and talk to a salesperson, that's great too.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, to pull that thread from a segmentation perspective, I mean, Ben, are you seeing organizations that are maybe of either different sizes or different, deal size lengths or deal size volumes? Are different people using this in different ways?
Yeah, I think that's the really interesting thing the piece that we have learned is it's really not dependent on company size whatsoever. And I think that ultimately, and to a certain extent, kind of makes this a little bit of a tricky topic, right? You have to develop as a marketing team, for example, a website that can, as Tim was referring to, speak to a small 4-person startup, and it can also speak to the large enterprises of the world, and that can be very tricky. And also, why you might have things like specific product pages or different workflows, or what Tim was referring to, and kind of pushing people in specific directions on your website depending on their size or their use case or whatever that may be. But I do think it is a tricky question to answer because so much software today can be used by the super early stage small startup all the way up to the large enterprises of the world. And that does present a fairly unique challenge of how can we market to all of them at the same time.
Ben, it's interesting that you say that because our research is showing the same thing, right? Enterprise buyers, they used to have a very different buying process, but we are seeing more enterprise buy and our buyers behaving like mid-market and SMB buyers, to your point.
Yeah, I really, it's interesting. And I think there's going to be a rise of this because if I'm a small business, but I can't afford a large sales team, or maybe I'm a mid-sized business, but I can't afford a large sales engineering team. How do I think through structuring guided demos versus sales-led demos versus layering in different parties to do demos, and then where do those fit? Any advice for people listening on things like that?
Yeah, I think it varies depending on the size of the company. Startups are really excited about sharing their product out with the world because they're brand new and they want to get their name out there and help people understand what it is that they offer. And enterprises, on the flip side of the coin, are trying to do something that they've never been able to do before oftentimes. And Tim kind of just referred to this. A lot of the larger enterprise companies we work with, I don't think if you asked them even 2 or 3 years ago, hey, would you consider putting your product in a guided fashion, a very open way on your website? The majority of them would say, how would I even do that? And also, no, I'm not interested in that whatsoever. So what we are seeing at Novatic and what's been really exciting for us in the last 1.5 years, 2 years that we've been around is, we are gaining just as much interest from some of these bigger companies that are looking to go that more SMB PLG approach that you maybe wouldn't expect from very technical products or very large enterprises. But with the technology and offerings that we have today in video or interactive demos, it really enables all teams, all products to be able to lead with their product in a very safe, guided way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So to then pull the thread there. So I find you on the website, watch some of the demos. how should the behavior of a seller then change? Like if I've already seen it, I've already engaged with you. What do we need to now do as far as like how we demo? Because I've already been exposed to the product. Do I just show the same thing again? Do I change my approach? What does that look like?
We better not show the same thing again. Absolutely not. This is where you get to have some fun on the sales side. For us, our biggest focus on the sales team, and if my team is listening right now, they probably smile because they know it's true, is every single conversation we have, we're trying to make it as much as we possibly can about that specific prospect. So Tim, you came inbound, you saw a product tour on our website, maybe you saw a product tour on one of your competitors, and you thought, man, they have that, we need to have that too. So when you come into the sales team, it's like, great, Tim, what piqued your interest? What specifically did you see on our website or on your competitor's website that really piqued your interest that you want to solve for your team as well? So now we're approaching it, David, like you were talking about before, which is that trust piece around, I'm not here necessarily to sell you anything. I'm here to sort of help you figure out if, product tours in this specific instance are what you're looking to solve and can really solve that specific problem. So that's really where selling is fun, because it's not selling. It's working with this prospect who's really, really intrigued by what it is you have and understands the value it can provide very quickly.
Yeah, as a seller, when I know that someone's already heard about me, seen me, it allows me to have, I call them an informed buyer. Like it allows me to cut through a lot of like the early educational phases and get much deeper into the workflows and exact problems and tying those maybe exact features and functions to the problem that they're trying to solve and how they're trying to solve it and why it's uniquely different. I feel like it allows almost for a deeper connection to be made, and even getting to some of the decision fatigue stuff around competitive differentiation and nuance that can be really hard to do, because you spend the first 1, 2, 3 meetings with someone just getting them to wrap their head around the solution. Then you need to then pull those independent threads. So you can almost do that sooner. Ben, are you seeing that kind of play out, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that the best piece of feedback that we hear over and over again is literally prospects telling us on initial calls, like, gosh, this has been such a breath of fresh air. This is so different than a lot of the other sales experiences that we have had. And that is not unique to specific. This is the experience that any company that is focused on buyer enablement will have as well, because software buyers are so used to that process that we talked about at the beginning of this, which is that really traditional, maybe like qualification, AE, then discovery, then blah, blah, blah. And so being able to come right in right away and asking different questions that buyers aren't necessarily used to. So I'm no longer going to run through like 20 discovery call questions. It's more going to be around, hey, David, I know you've had experience in the product. What specifically piqued your interest? How does that tie to the business case that you're looking to solve? So very quickly, we can get into your problems immediately and less focus on Ben's checklist of discovery questions that I need to answer to figure out if you're qualified.
Yeah, Ben, have you, and Tim, I don't mean to leave you. I want to get your perspective on this as well. I'm going to ask that one question, then I'm going to flip it to you. But like, have you guys been able to track within your clients the impact of this? So like, for instance, client A, prior to implementing sales cycle of this, average deal size of this, number of people involved in it, like stats like that, and then future state implementation, here's what's happened since. Like any thoughts there?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't have any necessarily that I feel super comfortable referencing, mostly because I'm pretty confident I'll probably get it wrong. But we do have an amazing repository of customer testimonials that not only speak to the deal cycles of prospects that go through product tours, but even things as basic as the CTA of take a product tour or try a product demo, or these sort of buyer enablement CTAs. For interactive demos specifically, our customers are seeing on average a 12% conversion. So people clicking on these product tours at a 12% rate compared to the standard SaaS website that's converting at 7%, or Google SEO at around 2 or 3%. So the rate in which these product tours are converting, specifically top of funnel, has been pretty astronomical. And then, we certainly have some pretty amazing customer testimonials about the quality of leads that go through a buyer enablement cycle versus ones that don't.
Tim, any thoughts from you on that one?
As a whole, I wish we had data at G2 to know how they converted. We would love to get that data from when you're on G2 and the amount of data that's on a page versus how they convert. We don't have the exact data, but there's a lot of the data that we do have that shows when you put more information out there, when there's more reviews, when there's a demo, when there is screenshots, all these things, right? We see much higher engagement on the page, and those do convert to clicks over to the website, clicks over to some of the CTAs that we have on the page, much better than when you don't. Much better, like to the form of usually 10x better.
That's awesome. So how far are people taking this? I want to look at Jim Kreller's question. Are we seeing folks kind of take this all the way to I've learned enough by the website, online product tours, maybe the segments that I watch in them, that I am confident making a decision and I can fully self-service buy? Like, are we seeing, Ben, are you seeing any of your customers, or even Tim, seeing people kind of convert to that point where I've done enough research on my own, I don't need to talk to people? Like, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
I would say for us, those are still, I would say, generally a little bit more few and far between. Truthfully, as our sales team, those are the home run leads, right? They come inbound and they're like, hey, this looks amazing, let's get started. But I think it does kind of get back to the broader point here, which is the goal of buyer enablement is to make this decision-making process a little bit more clear for prospects. But ultimately, the role of the sales rep is still tremendously important here, especially at Novatic. So there are still very specific niche questions, integration questions, some of those stuff that will always rely on the sales team. I think for us, we're excited to get into more of a self-serve motion. And ultimately, David, to your point, it feels, whether I or we want it to or not, like it's going to go in the direction that everybody has to have some sort of real, true self-serve motion. So for us, we're starting to see signs of that. Although the majority of sales we get are still more sales-led after they've gone through some of the initial qualification on their own.
That makes sense.
And we've been talking about this at G2 for a long time, the full self-serve. And we have actually started, one of the things that we're doing in labs is something we call G2 Deals, which is a full self-service buying motion. So it is isolating companies that do have this full self-service and enabling buyers that want to buy in that way to be able to do and filter and sort. And there, I can tell you, there is a certain persona of buyer, and they tend to be more SMB, tools that are pretty easy to implement, that are already doing that today. And a lot of times it does, and Ben, you referred to this earlier, right? You probably need to have a free trial available of some sort for them to like get in there and play around with it for a certain period of time before they make the final decision. But it's coming fast.
I mean, is there any fear in the marketplace like that prospects won't? I mean, I'm not hearing it, but maybe that if I do too much buyer enablement, like the prospects won't want to chat to sales, or they or maybe even they won't like my product, so they're going to go to my competitor. Like, is there any fears around doing this that you're hearing from customers?
I would say there is. I think maybe that fear might be healthy, David. And what I mean by that is, yeah, I think to a certain extent that buyers, when they start chatting with sales, are going to have a different expectation around what that conversation should look like. And I think that's a really positive direction in the like where SaaS buying is going. So what I think that really means is, does the role of the salesperson deteriorate? No, it just means that us as sales reps need to be, like I mentioned, a lot more product focused, a lot more trained in the like consultant stage of selling, which ultimately is the goal of every seller anyway. So is there fear that buyer expectations are really there? Yes, but I think ultimately that's a positive thing for companies and for sales reps.
Tim, you seeing any kind of are you hearing organizations that are a little more afraid to put too much information out there? Anything like that?
Well, hey, yeah, of course, right? And I think what this is highlighting for me, and I'm biased, obviously, my background is product, but it highlights the importance of product. Yeah. And I think that's partially what G2 wanted to happen, is we wanted to like bring products and companies that were really serving their customers well to the top. And so, yeah, if you're afraid that you have to rely on your sales team to do the selling of a product that's inferior, that you probably should be afraid. And I hope from a buying standpoint that I think that's both the things that Ben and I are, with our products, we're trying to change.
That makes sense.
And again, David, I think it comes from the B2C world. Like every single retailer that you may purchase something from online right now, I can almost guarantee will have the option to ship that piece of clothing back if it doesn't fit right, or if you want to exchange it. Are retailers super stoked about that concept? Probably not. Do they lose some money on that cycle? Yes, they probably do. But you know what? They have to offer that, because if they don't, I'm just going to go to Amazon or some other company that does offer that free return process. So obviously that's a niche example, but again, paralleling the B2C expectation with, I think, what we're going to see in B2B buying behavior.
So if you're a sales leader listening to this, or you're a marketing leader listening to this, how do you get your teams excited then about kind of the self-service motion? Like what, how do you help position and overcome maybe some of those, natural growing pains with any type of change?
Yeah, I think for me, pretty simply, what I would tell my sales reps is I'm going to be saving you a lot of time, and the time I am going to ask you to spend on prospects is going to be well worth it because of the quality of the leads. Meaning, Tim, you told me in our one-on-one last quarter that you are sick of these show up and throw up demos to super small startups or bad fits for these specific reasons. Well, we are going to put resources into buyer enablement so that when you do get these leads, you might not get quite as many a week, but they're going to be higher quality. They're already going to have experience or product and software, so that when they do get to you, you're going to have a much higher likelihood to close them. You're going to be able to spend more time on them, and I'm going to save you some time that you were spending on meaningless demos.
Well said.
Tim, are you hearing anything along those lines of sellers, or do they ever have fear of what's going to pop up on G2 or something like that? Any thoughts there?
Of course, there's fear with that. I would like to think that that is a positive fear, but I just would echo everything that Ben said with that. When you think about the benefits, and does it change the way that you have to sell? Of course, right? Does it change the people that you might have to hire in selling? I think it does as well.
So when we think about like expansion motions are going to be a big part of this next year. We're seeing a lot of that where we hope new business buying cycles don't slow down, but there's absolute fear, and rightfully so, that they might. So we're talking a lot about kind of expansion and how do we take our current customer base, serve them as best as humanly possible, and then expand from there. Anything, from y'all's perspective on, how organizations are maybe using, better buyer enablement to not only lean into new business, but customers?
Yeah, I think for us, something that we hear pretty consistently from the companies that we work with is starting to deploy product tours for initial product adoption. But most importantly as well, especially for the larger enterprises that you're most excited about some of that upsell or post-sales selling, is again reliance on internal champions to say, hey Tim, my team uses this Novatic tool over here for marketing, but I really think it could help your sales team. Like, here's a quick product tour of our software built on Novatic. Let me know if you're interested. I can put you in touch with the Novatic team. So again, enabling people who are already customers to help socialize and share this internally, so that you do have some of those upsell motion and opportunities. That's really the way we're using it, and kind of how I think about it.
So different divisions, different use cases, things along those lines. Business units, even from a large enterprise perspective. So if I'm using it in the U.S., but we need to go expand, to Europe or APAC globally, like there's definitely some angles. Are you seeing a lot of your customers kind of start leaning into that more, or what's the thought?
I think that, and I also think additional product lines as well, is something that a lot of companies are really starting to hyper focus on, which is, especially maybe a more established company that has dominated a market in one specific area, is trying to figure out, especially for 2023 in the current economic climate, how can we remain attractive? How can we continue to grow? So we've seen a lot of the teams we partner with say, hey, we are rolling out a brand new product in Q2 of 2023. We'd love to be able to build some assets around that so that we can sell this new product to the existing customer base that we have today. Yeah,
that's got to make, to your point, launching new products, gaining awareness for existing customers, like very easy for our sales team to say, oh, we're making this change. Let's bundle it, let's package it, let's provide it to sales and marketing, and then let's scale it. So that makes a ton of sense. Awesome. Tim, any thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, so I think about the ways that you expand with an existing client, and one is new licenses into areas in the business that you haven't been in for the same product. which Ben, I think you covered a little bit. Then of course, right, there's new product lines and new features that might upsell to a new version or a completely different product as well. And I think a wonderful way to do that is what I call product-led growth, where you're in there, right? And so can you offer free trials, interactive demos right within the product? So while they're in there, they can start to click around and really get to know. And then ultimately in that process, give them the opportunity to chat with their customer success representative about what that is and how they might use it. And what we've seen, this is for us internally, we've seen much better success with that than we have with, having to make 20, 30 different CSM calls to, get somebody interested in a particular feature that you might have just launched.
No, that's great perspective. Thanks, Tim. Well, I know we're getting very close to time. I've seen Elliot pop back on to join the group again. Elliot, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, just going to wrap things up now. Of course, want to thank everyone for attending. Always love having you guys here. Big thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Nevadic. Make sure to check them out. A big thank you to Ben, Tim, and David for providing the great content. Recordings and key takeaways are going to be available on our page shortly. Don't forget to check out our upcoming events, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.